I never imagined I'd find myself in a moment like this. It wasn't something I had ever planned for or even considered. But life has a way of throwing unexpected twists, ones you can't foresee. It all began on an afternoon that should have been forgettable, just another ordinary day blending into the past. Yet, that particular day remained, it altered everything. The house was still, with only the gentle hum of the air conditioner and the occasional chirping of birds outside. I had just finished cleaning up in the kitchen when I suddenly felt a gaze on me. Not a fleeting glance, but something lingering, intent. When I turned, there he stood in the doorway, my stepson, Tyler. Tyler had always been courteous, well-mannered, the type who held doors open and expressed gratitude without being reminded. But lately, something in the way he looked at me had changed. At first, I dismissed it as meaningless. He was 22, caught in that transition between adolescence and full-grown adulthood, still trying to carve his path. He had always shared a close bond with his father, but with his dad traveling more for work, he had been spending more time around me. I didn't mind, I enjoyed the company. But this was different. His stare wasn't casual. It was focused, as if he was searching for something in me, waiting for a response. A warmth spread through my chest, something unsettling, yet oddly exhilarating. "Do you need something?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. He hesitated briefly before shaking his head. "No, just thinking." Thinking about what? I could have asked, but deep down, I already knew. And maybe, just maybe, a small part of me wanted him to say it aloud. Instead, I turned back to the sink, watching the soapy water spiral down the drain. Dinner that evening was uneventful, or at least it should have been. The television murmured in the background as I sat across from Tyler at the dining table. I asked him about his classes, his plans for the summer. He answered, but there was something different in his voice, a subtle edge that hadn't been there before. I sensed it in the way he observed me, as though he were waiting for something, for an opening. Later that night, after I had gone upstairs, a knock sounded at my bedroom door. It was late, far too late, for a simple chat. I hesitated before opening it, my breath catching slightly when I saw him standing there. He seemed like he had something to say, but wasn't sure how to begin. He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what I'm doing." Neither did I. But I knew we were standing on the edge of something, a boundary we weren't meant to cross, yet one that was slowly fading. "Tyler," I said cautiously, "this isn't—" "I know," he interrupted, "but that doesn't change anything, does it?" His words hung between us, heavy, charged. I should have stepped back, shut the door, stopped whatever this was before it truly began. But I didn't. I stood there, watching him, waiting. "Good night," he finally said, his voice softer now, as if he had come to some unspoken decision. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me frozen in place, my pulse erratic. I closed the door, but sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way he had looked at me, the weight in his voice. It was wrong. It was dangerous. It was something I should have never allowed. And yet, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up feeling as though I had barely rested at all. The events of the night before kept looping in my mind, and I couldn't shake the certainty that something between us had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. I went through my morning routine as normally as possible, hoping that by pretending nothing had happened, it would simply fade. But as I walked downstairs and spotted Tyler in the kitchen, I realized how wrong I had been. He stood leaning against the counter, a coffee mug in hand, his eyes on me with the same intensity I had felt the night before. "Morning," he greeted casually, as though nothing had changed. "Morning," I echoed, forcing a smile. I kept my movements measured as I poured myself a cup of coffee, careful not to meet his gaze for too long. If I gave too much away, if I let him glimpse the thoughts swirling inside me, I wasn't sure I could take them back. I sat at the table, hoping that keeping my distance would make the tension dissipate. But Tyler didn't leave. Instead, he took a seat across from me, sipping his coffee slowly. "You didn't sleep much," he remarked at last. I looked up sharply, my heartbeat faltering. "What makes you say that?" I could hear you moving around. "You were up late." He was watching me again, that same searching look that made my stomach tighten. I forced myself to remain composed, to keep my tone light. "Just had trouble settling down, I guess. Nothing unusual." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned forward, setting his mug down. Was it because of me? There it was, the question I had been dreading, the one that, if I wasn't careful, could pull me deeper into dangerous territory. "Tyler, I think we need to be cautious here," I said, keeping my voice steady even as my hands clenched in my lap. "I know things feel different lately, but they don't just feel different. They are different," he interrupted. I swallowed hard. "That doesn't mean we have to act on it." He studied me for a long moment, and for the briefest instant, I thought that maybe, just maybe, this would be the end of it. That he would nod, say he understood, and we could return to the way things had been before. Just then, he rose to his feet, slowly and purposefully, making his way around the table in my direction. My breath caught as his hand came to rest on the back of my chair, his body near enough that I could sense his warmth. "You don't actually believe that, do you?" he murmured, his voice low. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs. I needed to put an end to this, to stand up and create some space between us. But I didn't move. I couldn't. His fingers barely grazed my arm, the lightest touch, and suddenly it felt as though the very atmosphere in the room had shifted. "Tyler," I exhaled, my voice nearly inaudible. He stayed there, unmoving, his gaze locked onto mine, waiting for me to grant him permission. And for one dizzying, terrifying moment, I wanted to. The sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. I jolted backward just as my husband entered the house, setting his briefcase down with a weary sigh. "Hey, sweetheart," he called out. "Sorry I'm so late. Traffic was a nightmare." I shot to my feet, my pulse racing. "You're home early," I managed. He smiled, crossing the room to press a kiss to my cheek, completely unaware of the storm that had just been brewing in the air between Tyler and me. Meetings wrapped up quicker than expected, so I figured I'd surprise you. "That's nice," I replied, forcing a smile. Tyler had stepped away, his expression impossible to read, yet the weight of what had nearly happened still pressed against me. I had told myself it was nothing, that I wouldn't let things progress further. But as I stood there, my husband just a few steps away, I knew deep down that it wasn't over, not even close. That entire evening, I avoided looking at Tyler. Each time our eyes accidentally met, I felt as if my husband would somehow see straight through me, as though the weight of what had nearly happened was written plainly across my face. I busied myself in the kitchen, acting as if I were completely engrossed in chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, anything to keep my hands preoccupied. But I could still sense Tyler's presence in the room, the way he lingered, his attention never straying far from me. Dinner was a quiet affair. My husband, oblivious to the charged atmosphere, kept himself occupied, discussing his meetings, the issues he'd handled at work, his plans for the weekend. Tyler barely contributed, responding with only brief, clipped answers as he absent-mindedly pushed his food around on his plate. I wasn't much better. My mind was in turmoil, my body rigid, every fiber of me hyper-aware of his presence across the table. After dinner, my husband collapsed onto the couch, exhausted from his day, flipping through television channels without much focus. I excused myself, retreating into the kitchen, pretending to tidy up when in reality, I was just trying to collect my thoughts. The moment I was alone, I let out a slow, shaky breath, my hands gripping the counter's edge. I needed space, clarity, something to break the storm of emotions inside me. But I wasn't given the chance. I felt him before I heard him. Tyler's presence was unmistakable, the shift in the air sending a shiver down my spine. I didn't turn, but I knew he was standing close behind me. "We need to talk," he said softly. "Not now," I whispered, my fingers tightening around the dish towel in my hands. "Then when?" His voice was quiet, but firm, too close, too insistent. "This can't happen," I murmured, barely getting the words out. "It was a mistake. We have to forget about it." "You don't actually believe that," he countered, stepping in closer. "I can see it in your eyes." I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to gather the strength to put an end to this, to push him away before it escalated beyond control. But when I finally opened them and turned to face him, the words lodged in my throat. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something deeper, something dangerous, a challenge. Tyler, a sound from the living room made us both freeze. My husband laughed at something on the TV, completely unaware of what was unfolding just feet away from him. Go to bed, I said firmly. This conversation is over. He hesitated, his jaw tensing, but after a long moment, he gave a small nod. Without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing up the stairs. I leaned against the counter, my heart hammering in my chest. I had ended it. I had drawn a line. But deep down, I knew that line had already begun to blur the second I allowed myself to consider the possibility of something more. The following days were suffused with unbearable tension. Tyler was always there, an unspoken reminder of what had almost transpired. He didn't push, didn't corner me again, but the silence between us was thick with words we dared not say aloud. That Friday, my husband left for another business trip, kissing my cheek as he picked up his suitcase. Call me if you need anything, he said with a warm smile. I nodded, forcing one in return. I will. Be safe. The moment the door shut behind him, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. And then I felt it, the weight of someone's gaze on me. I turned. He was there, standing at the foot of the stairs. Tyler. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence stretched, heavy with everything we refused to acknowledge. And in that moment, I knew I was standing at the edge of something irreversible, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stop myself from falling. The house felt different with my husband gone. It was quieter, yet the silence carried a strange kind of expectation, thick with anticipation. Tyler was still here, but he had remained wordless since my husband left that morning. The tension between us had only intensified, an invisible force pulling me toward something I had no business wanting. I threw myself into menial tasks, hoping distractions would drown out the thoughts circling in my mind. I wiped down the counters, rearranged the spice rack, even folded laundry that wasn't out of place to begin with. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep my thoughts from wandering back to him. When the clock hit noon, it dawned on me that I hadn't caught sight of Tyler all morning. Had he left? Was he deliberately keeping his distance? A mix of relief and disappointment settled in my chest. I shook my head, chastising myself for caring at all. I needed some space, time to clear my mind before I did something I couldn't undo. I wandered into the living room, sinking onto the couch, hoping that watching some television might offer a much-needed distraction. But just as I reached for the remote, the sound of footsteps echoed down the stairs. I turned my head, and there he was. Tyler stood at the foot of the staircase, observing me. He appeared deep in thought, his hands gripping the banister as though he was debating whether to approach. My heartbeat quickened. "You've been avoiding me," I blurted, regretting the words the instant they left my mouth. He met my gaze evenly, his tone unreadable. I thought that was what you wanted. I swallowed hard. I just, I don't know what's going on between us. Taking a measured step forward, his expression remained composed, yet purposeful. I think you do. A sharp breath escaped me, my hands clenching in my lap. Tyler, this can't. Why not? He cut in, his voice quiet but resolute, his eyes never leaving mine. You act like you don't feel it, but I know you do. I see it. I feel it. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come because he was right. I did feel it, and pretending otherwise only made it stronger. He took another step toward me, and I knew I should stand, create space, put an end to whatever was happening before it spiraled any further out of control. But I didn't move. You're afraid, he murmured, his voice softer now. Not because this is wrong, but because you don't trust yourself to stop. My breath caught. Tyler, before I could finish, he was standing right in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from him. My pulse pounded wildly. I won't do anything you don't want, he murmured, his gaze steady. But you need to be honest with yourself. I shut my eyes, trying to suppress the emotions surging inside me. This wasn't just about temptation. It was about the undeniable connection that had been building between us, one I had done everything in my power to ignore. When I finally opened my eyes, he was still watching me, waiting for my response, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to give him the answer he deserved. The silence between us thickened, neither of us daring to speak or move. My heartbeat drummed loudly in my ears, as though warning me of what I already knew. I should have stepped away, told him to leave, to forget whatever had been simmering between us. But I remained rooted in place, my breathing shallow, my fingers pressing into my thighs as if to steady myself. Tyler watched me intently, searching for something, permission, encouragement, a sign that I wanted this as much as he did. And that was the real issue. I did, but wanting something didn't make it right. Forcing a laugh that came out more nervous than casual, I pushed myself to my feet. We're being ridiculous. His jaw tensed slightly, but he didn't retreat. You don't believe that. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. Tyler, this isn't wrong, he interrupted before I could finish, because it doesn't feel wrong. I inhaled sharply, the words catching before they could form. It wasn't about whether it felt right or wrong. It was about the consequences, the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. I shook my head. That doesn't matter. We can't. He exhaled slowly through his nose, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he simply studied me, his patience making my stomach twist into knots. Then, as if reaching a decision, he stepped back. Fine. I blinked, suddenly overwhelmed by the distance between us. It felt too wide, too empty. Fine. He gave a small nod, his expression impossible to read. If you really believe we should ignore this, that it means nothing, then I won't bring it up again. Relief should have flooded through me, I should have felt lighter, reassured that he was offering me a way out, an escape from something I had no right to entertain. Instead, all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. I gave a slow nod, forcing myself to ignore the disappointment curling in my stomach. That's for the best. A flicker of something passed across his face, something I couldn't quite place. Right. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs without another word. I didn't stop him. I didn't call out. I simply stood there, watching him disappear, feeling the weight of something unfinished settle over me. The house didn't feel the same after that. The silence between us wasn't just heavy, it was impenetrable. Tyler kept his distance. He wasn't unkind, wasn't harsh, but there was a space between us now, a noticeable absence in every room he wasn't in. I told myself this was what I wanted, that this was the right choice. But every time I caught him watching me from across the house, his expression unreadable, I found myself questioning whether doing what was right felt the same as being able to bear it. The days that followed were unbearably quiet. Tyler honored his word. He didn't push, didn't bring it up again, didn't blur any lines. But the atmosphere remained thick, charged with all the things left unspoken. I should have felt grateful that he had stepped back, should have been relieved, but I wasn't. Instead, what I felt unsettled me more than the guilt I had expected. I missed it. I missed the weight of his gaze, the way he challenged me, how he forced me to face what was happening rather than running from it. Without him close, the house felt emptier. The hours stretched endlessly, and I found myself waiting for something I had already told myself could never happen. So I sought distractions. I kept myself busy, going out more often, running errands that didn't need to be done, finding any excuse to be anywhere. But being alone in the house, with nothing but my thoughts, I threw myself into housework whenever I was home, preparing elaborate dishes no one had requested, anything to keep both my hands and mind occupied. But it was useless. No matter how much I tried to deceive myself, I couldn't ignore the truth. I wanted him. And knowing he had stopped trying, that he had chosen to let go, didn't make it easier. It only made it worse. Because now, I was the one unable to stop thinking about the possibilities, the one struggling to resist the urge to cross a boundary I had so firmly established. Late one evening, after a day spent avoiding him just as much as he had been avoiding me, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, trying to focus on the steady sound of the water instead of the restless energy twisting inside me. When I turned, he was there, standing in the doorway. I stiffened, gripping the edge of the sink. Something wrong? My voice was even, but my pulse was anything but. No, he replied, his expression unreadable. I just thought maybe you were done avoiding me. I swallowed hard. I'm not avoiding you. His eyebrow lifted, clearly skeptical. Right. That's why you've barely spoken to me in days. I turned back toward the sink, scrubbing a plate that was already spotless. I just think it's for the best. Do you? He stepped forward, not too close, but near enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence. Because it sure doesn't seem like you do. I shut off the faucet, inhaling deeply before meeting his gaze. Tyler, no, he interrupted smoothly. You decided. I just didn't fight you on it. I pressed my lips together, my hands tightening around the counter's edge. Isn't that the same thing? Not even close. His gaze studied me, slow and deliberate. You want me to act like nothing's happening here, but we both know better. A shiver ran through me, but I held my ground. That doesn't mean we have to act on it. He stepped in again, close enough that I could see the intensity in his eyes, the frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Then why are you still standing here? I opened my mouth, but no words came out because there was no response that wouldn't unravel everything. He tilted his head slightly, waiting, giving me one final opportunity to push him away. But I didn't, and that was all the answer he needed. Time stretched between us, neither of us moving, neither of us even daring to breathe too hard. His gaze pressed down on me, heavy with unspoken meaning, daring me to break first. And maybe I already had. Maybe I had been breaking for a long time, piece by piece, until all that remained was the inevitable. I could have walked away. I could have pushed him back, ended it before the moment could take hold. But I didn't. Instead, I stood still, my heart hammering against my ribs, my breath shallow, waiting for him to say something, anything that would force me to make a choice I wasn't ready for. You don't want me to walk away. His voice was quiet, but unwavering. I swallowed hard, my fingers digging into the counter. Tyler, this isn't— Don't say it's wrong, he cut in. Because you don't believe that. I exhaled sharply, my eyes fluttering shut for just a second. It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what's right. He stepped even closer, the distance between us reduced to nearly nothing. And this feels wrong to you? I couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. It didn't. It felt inevitable, like something that had been building for far too long, no matter how much I had tried to fight it. Then stop pretending, he murmured. His words sent a tremor down my spine. I could feel my resolve slipping, falling through my fingers like grains of sand. The air between us pulsed with something electric, something dangerous, and in that instant, I knew whatever boundary we had once drawn no longer existed. Tell me to leave, he said, his voice softer now. And I will. I looked at him, truly looked at him. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to acknowledge it. The tension, the stolen glances, the way my heart beat faster when he was near. It was all there, undeniable, impossible to ignore. But I couldn't say it. I couldn't tell him to leave, and that was the only answer he needed. I knew I had crossed the line the moment I didn't send him away. The tension wasn't just lingering between us, it was overwhelming, consuming, pulling us under before either of us could resist. My heart pounded as I felt his presence, impossibly close, yet still waiting, still, giving me the chance to change my mind. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. Tyler's breath was steady, his hands unmoving at his sides, restrained. But I could feel the warmth radiating from him, my skin burning with the awareness that this was it, the moment where everything shifted. I took a step back just enough to create a sliver of space between us, but not enough to ease the tension. "We can't take this back," I whispered. "I don't want to." His response was immediate, certain, and with that, the last thread of my resistance snapped. I had spent too much time pretending, too long fighting against something that had already taken root. Every excuse, every logical reason why this shouldn't happen crumbled beneath the weight of what was undeniable. I had convinced myself that avoiding him, ignoring the way he looked at me, would be enough to make it go away. But I had been lying to myself. Tyler closed the remaining space between us, his fingers brushing against my arm in the lightest of touches. Waiting, giving me the chance to stop this, but I wouldn't. Yet, instead of acting, I merely inclined my head, my gaze locked onto his, fully aware that the instant I moved, the second I surrendered, there would be no undoing it. And then I did. The world distorted, reason slipping from my grasp like water through open fingers. For the first time in months, I let go. I stopped analyzing, stopped rationalizing, stopped worrying about repercussions. Time no longer moved the same way after that. Moments dissolved into days, and days blurred into something altogether indistinct. I couldn't resist wanting more, seeking justifications to be near him, to share the same air, to linger in the same space where this silent tension had been lingering far too long. But reality has a way of creeping back in, no matter how much you try to keep it out. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the house wrapped in stillness. My husband had returned the night before, oblivious to the shift that had settled into the atmosphere, the hidden truth taking root beneath his own roof. He pressed a kiss to my cheek as he left for a round of golf, his touch familiar, yet his presence suddenly alien. The guilt should have consumed me, should have shattered the delicate illusion I had constructed, but it didn't. And that frightened me more than anything else. Tyler was in the living room when I entered, his face unreadable, his posture casual, yet his gaze piercing. He had always been able to decipher me too well, and without a single word spoken, I knew he could sense my inner conflict. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered, but the words felt empty, weak. He regarded me for a long moment before offering a small nod, though there was no finality in his response. "I know." Silence expanded between us, heavy with the weight of all that remained unspoken. I turned to leave, but his voice halted me. "Do you regret it?" I should have said yes. I should have seized that moment to put an end to it, to erase what had unfolded before it could unravel everything. But when I turned back to face him, the answer was already visible in my expression. No. His jaw tightened slightly as he inclined his head once. Neither do I. And just like that, the truth settled between us. Immovable. I did not regret it, not then, perhaps not ever. But knowing that didn't make it any less difficult, because some choices don't offer neat conclusions. Some decisions linger, shadowing every step, reminding you that once you've crossed a boundary, there's no retreat, only a path forward into uncertainty.